Thank you for taking time being with us today. Tell us a little bit more regarding your background and how did you get into real estate?
So I started out as a news cameraman out of high school and college. I went to work for a TV station in Phoenix, Arizona, and did that for about 10 years. I was schlepping camera gear around in 115-degree heat, and just got tired of it. One day I just decided enough was enough. I wanted to do something else. And being a TV news cameraman for all those years, I hadn't really developed any other skill. I wasn't a good businessman, at least at the time I wasn't. I didn't know how to program computers. My golf game was terrible, so I wasn't going to be able to go on a pro golf tour. So I read a book. I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it inspired me to start a business in real estate because it seemed like that's kind of how the common man or common woman created wealth and financial freedom for themselves is through real estate. So I eventually was able to convince my wife to let me quit my job and start real estate investing full time. And it started out pretty slow. First year, I made about $25,000. I think the second year I made about 65. And then the following year, the real estate market here in Phoenix just exploded. And I think in 2005, I made over $1 million. And then of course we know what happened after that. The market crashed, lost my ass and had to start all over again and had to rebuild starting in 2009. So since that time, I partnered up with a guy, his name is Manny Romero. Him and I have been business partners since the market crashed in 2009. And we started fixing and flipping houses in Phoenix. And from 2009 to 2012, did about, 100, 125 fix and flips. And we expanded our business in 2012 into the Milwaukee, Wisconsin real estate market. We felt like the Phoenix market was getting pretty overheated and the margins were starting to get really slim. So we expanded into the Milwaukee market and have been working there the last 5 years. And here more recently, the last year and a half, 2 years, we started doing more fix and flips in Phoenix again. So a lot of the investors that were here left the market. A lot of the inexperienced investors weren't finding easy kind of lipstick on a pig type fix and flip projects. So now the opportunities here in Phoenix are larger scale types of renovations, which we're equipped to do now. So yeah, now we are fixing and flipping houses in Phoenix, Arizona, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
But going back, how did you make the transition? Because this brings a lot of value to people that are changing basically careers. They find something that they really love, but they have a different shirt. So how did you make the transition from a cameraman to a real estate investor? Because you had no track record, you had nothing but the will basically.
Yeah, I think for most people, and this is interesting, I meet a lot of people like myself, typically in their 30s, maybe late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, who've worked at a corporate job. Now, just because I was working in TV news, you would think I was a cameraman. It was still a corporate type job. I had a certain amount of hours I had to work every week. I was beholden to 2 or 3 bosses at any given time. And I was punching a time clock. And so I was really looking for anything that could provide me with some not just financial freedom. I mean, yeah, it's great to have a lot of money, but for me, it was even more important to have that time freedom. Like, working on somebody else's schedule just wasn't for me anymore. I wanted to be able to attend my daughter's birthday parties and special events, like, their drama club performances and their karate tournaments and their soccer games. So for me, it was about that time freedom. So I was willing to do just about anything if it gave me that opportunity. And I guess, if I really, really broke it down, when I was in TV news as a cameraman, I was creating every single day. I would come in to the TV station and I would have to create something from nothing. I would come into the news station and they would give me an idea. They'd say, Marty, we want you to do a story about this. We want you to do a story about, a young lady who is working on recovering from, cancer or whatever. But I had nothing. I had no video. I had no audio. I didn't have anything. So I had to create a story around this idea, right? And in a way, I guess if you think about it, that's what fixing and flipping houses is. You walk into a distressed property and you don't really have a lot to work with. You just have an idea or a concept of what you want it to look like when you're done. So you have to kind of visualize what it's going to look like, and the process you have to work your way through to get to that point. So maybe that's why I'm successful at fixing and flipping houses, and why I love it so much, because in a way it's like creating a story that would air on your evening news. You walk in with kind of a blank slate with not a lot to work with, something that's really kind of undefined and rough around the edges, and you've got to create something beautiful. And so that transformation, that creation process is what gets me so excited, and it's why I love doing it so much. I love finding kind of the ugliest, most neglected house on the street and turning it into the neighborhood gem. That's what I love. And then certainly the recognition that we get from neighbors, from people who live in the community, seeing what we're doing, that means a lot. Of course, cash in the check at the end when you make a nice profit is a lot of fun too. But if we don't just do it for the money, we do it because we love that transformation process.
But when you were starting out, nobody basically took you serious, right? Because you made a transition from a camera guy to a real estate investor. You had no track record. How did you how did you come up with capital in order to fund your first deal? Can you run us through that?
Sure. So typically, what I tell new investors or people who want to start out fixing and flipping houses is to either find someone in your market who is currently doing it and is successful at it, or find somebody out in the world who is, that you can shadow, that can mentor you, that can kind of give you the basics, the foundation to fixing and flipping houses, and that education, right? That experience. And that's how it happened for me. I met a local real estate investor who kind of took me under his wing and showed me the process. Now I had to work at it. I mean, I was out knocking on doors, talking to homeowners directly who were in distress, homeowners in foreclosure. And then I would bring this investor those deals. And then, I would get paid typically a small finder's fee or an assignment fee or a wholesale fee for that property. And in exchange, I learned the business. So that's how I got started. And so I didn't really need my own money in the beginning. But what happened was, after just doing a handful of deals like that, my wife's dad, my father-in-law, saw, I had left my job, and, my wife and I weren't struggling. We didn't go broke. I wasn't living underneath a highway overpass. Obviously I was succeeding, and he was impressed by that. And he asked me, why are you doing these deals and basically handing them over to another investor so that he can make all the money or most of the money? And I said, well, I don't have my own capital. So my father-in-law said to me, he said, well, what if I gave you the money? And he's like, I'm not going to give it to you, but what if I lent you the money? And he had a pretty large line of credit on his home at the time. And he said, my interest rate's 4%. I'll lend you the money at 4% so you can keep almost all of the money. So I call that love money. Most people, when they start out, and it really doesn't matter if it's fixing and flipping houses or, starting a bakery, whatever it is. If you're starting out in business, typically that first tranche of capital is going to come from someone you love, someone who trusts you, someone who believes in you, someone that sees that you're dedicated to not just executing your business, but continuing to learn. So that's what happened. So my father-in-law lent me, I think it was $120,000. I did 2 or 3 deals and turned that $120,000 into $250,000 in a pretty short period of time. And from there, it just kind of branched out from, loved ones and family members and friends to just random strangers who would either drive by one of our projects and see what we were doing, or find our website and ask to partner or invest or lend money to us. And it happened pretty quickly. And I think that's, if there's one message I could convey to anyone who's thinking about starting out, fixing and flipping houses and is worried about the capital part of it, if you could just figure out the operational side of the business, which is finding the property, identifying, the rehab budget, and coming up with a scope of work, and just figuring out the operational side of it. The money is pretty easy. There's a ton of money out there in the world, and they're looking for people like me, who know how to execute, who know how to actually operate the business, the fix and flip business. If you have that skill, that's pretty unique. And it's much easier to find money if you've kind of committed yourself to learning the business and the operational and the logistical side of fixing and flipping houses.
So essentially, just to hit the nail in the head, changing shirts, meaning changing careers from blue to green. The key point here was you shadowing someone that had a lot of experience. So how long did it take you? How long did you do that?
It was about a year. We worked together with this investor I did about 1 year. And let me tell you, I've been blessed. After the real estate market crashed in 2007, 2008, I connected with another very successful real estate investor here in Phoenix who kind of retaught me the business, kind of the new way of fixing and flipping houses, because the market, was completely turned upside down. So I kind of was fortunate in that I had two different mentors kind of take me under their wing. But I get a lot of people who approach me and say, "Hey, Marty, will you do that for me?" Because I do a lot of interviews like this. I write a lot of blog posts and articles and whatnot. And there just aren't that many people out there, honestly, who are successfully fixing and flipping houses as a business. And there certainly aren't very many people who are going to just kind of take you under their wing, right? So a lot of this just requires that if you're going to just start out, that you read books, find blogs, videos, attend seminars and workshops, not hopefully from guru types, but from real estate practitioners who are actually out in the world doing this. And that's why my partner and I, we started our own coaching and consulting company about 2 years ago, because frankly, it's really difficult to have a scaled fix and flip business like we have in Phoenix and Milwaukee, and then be able to kind of hold people's hand and take them under our wing one-on-one. We just don't have the bandwidth for that. So we created our own company, and we've kind of created a scalable coaching business to do that. But if you're fortunate enough, like I was, to find somebody in your market, in your real estate market, that is willing to do that, then do whatever you have to do for them. Bring them coffee, mop their floors. I started out hanging when I was relearning the business in 2000 and 2009, 2008. For this particular investor, I was hanging ceiling fans and hanging window blinds and installing door hardware on houses, or whatever he needed me to do. I did it because I was broke. I needed a lot of help financially because I'd lost everything. So that's how I did it.
And I would like to get more clear on this. So how long did you did the fix and flip business until you got to 2007, 2008? How was the time span?
So I worked on, I quit my job in 2002 and ran my investment business full-time until 2007. Then that's when the market pretty much crashed. For me, the experts, typically say it was about 2008. It was August of 2007 when I felt it hit my company. And I'll never forget, in 2007, August of 2007, I have an Excel spreadsheet that I used to track all of the properties on our books. And at that time, I think I had about 65 of them. And I think we had at that time about 11 or 12 in escrow to sell that month, which would have net us about $300,000 net, us $300,000 in profit in that 1 month in August. Not one of those 10 or 12 properties actually closed. They all fell out of escrow because none of those buyers could get their mortgages. That's when the stated income loans and on the all those mortgage-backed security companies went belly up, and none of them got their loans approved. So that was $300,000 in revenue I was counting on that I didn't get. And I actually lost $33,000 that month because I had all this overhead. I had a staff of 8 people working for me. I had an office, lease. I had all kinds of expenses. So I actually was the first year in real estate I'd ever lost money. I'd lost 32 grand, and then it just spiraled after that. It was just, a hard tumble following 6-8 months. And I was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And eventually it just caved in on me. I kept thinking it was going to get better, and it didn't. So that was 2007 into 2008. And then towards the end of 2009 is when I met up with this new fix and flip investor here in Phoenix. And I was actually connected to him through the pastor of my church. Talk about divine intervention. And that's when this guy, we connected, and he kind of taught me the new way of fixing and flipping houses, which was finding properties at auction at these, foreclosure sales. Because up until that time, I never purchased houses at an auction before, because the market was so good, nobody was getting foreclosed on, right? Right. The real estate market was so strong, there were no houses to buy at foreclosure auctions. Nobody lost their house and then when the market collapsed, now all of a sudden there was this new opportunity at the auctions, which I'd never done before. So that's kind of what I mean by kind of relearning the business through this investor.
And how had your underwriting changed? So what did you started doing different, specifically regarding numbers, regarding what you were expecting from each deal?
Well, believe it or not, my approach to buying real estate has never really changed. I mean, even in 2006, when the market here in Phoenix was white hot, I was still very disciplined. I was still buying houses typically 30 to 35% below the market. But the market here at that time was so overinflated because of all, the mortgage-backed securities and all of the people that were buying houses that shouldn't have been, that weren't really qualified, it artificially inflated prices. So I felt like even at the very peak of the market, I felt that there was a correction coming. It seemed obvious to me, but I was expecting perhaps a 15 to 20% correction in the market. We ended up here in Phoenix dropping by almost 60% from the peak, so a house, that was worth $100,000 all of a sudden was only worth 40. Now, even though I bought it at 70, I was still $30,000 underwater. So, and a lot of that had to do with, and I feel like still to this day, I feel like that after the crash, the market was definitely artificially inflated, but it became artificially underinflated, if you will, when the market, the values went way below where they really should have been, but they hung around down there for, almost 24 months after the crash, 18 months to 24 months. So that's what made it so difficult for me, because I was sitting on all these houses, and even though I was disciplined in the way I bought them, I was still underwater. But my approach to buying, after the crash, I still looked at it the same way. I said, I still need to get enough of a margin, enough of a discount on the property to be able to fix it up and sell it and make a profit. So the way I looked at my numbers and evaluated a deal never really changed. There was just these extenuating circumstances. And in our case, in 2005 and 6, we had these mortgage-backed securities. I mean, now, if you've ever watched, I read the book, Too Big to Fail. And then, of course, there's the movie and the book, The Big Short. Sure. It explains a lot of all that and how it happened. But a lot of that, was completely beyond my control. And, I just kind of chalk it up to a lot of, external forces at work. But my hope is, and I keep a close eye on this now, that, we won't go through another period like that where unqualified people are allowed to buy houses. And another thing I look at, I'll tell you, is now, and this is something I learned as a result of the crash, is affordability. And how affordable is a median priced home in my real estate market compared to what average incomes are. When you look back at 05 and 06, it got way out of whack. And so I look at those values now, median price, average income, here in Phoenix and in Milwaukee where we invest, and they still are pretty manageable. So I feel like if it started to get completely crazy where, a family of four with an average income of $60,000, can't afford to buy a medium priced home anymore, then I'd start to worry.
Gotcha. And what's the, can you run us through the numbers? So what's the deal that you like? So let's say both of us have a deal across the table. What do you like in a deal? What typical house, typical numbers? What do you like?
So really, people ask me this all the time. I don't know if you've heard of, they call it the 70% rule.
Sure.
And you always want to get at least a 30% discount off of the retail value or the after repair value of the house. So if the house is worth $100,000 all fixed up, you should never pay more than $70,000 for it. And I'm not a big fan of that rule. I don't know who came up with it, but to me, the big factor in all of this is the rehab and what it's going to cost to fix the house up. Because you could buy a house that's worth $100,000 for $80,000, only get a 20% discount and still make money.
Sure.
Because if the house only needs carpet and paint, you only got to put $2,000 or $3,000 into it. You can still buy it for 80 cents on the dollar and make money.
Sure.
Conversely, if you buy a house for $70,000 thinking you got a great deal because you got a 30% discount, but the house needs $60,000 in rehab, you're going to lose money. So to me, the first thing I look at in a property after I determine what its after repair value is, what it's going to be worth once I'm done fixing it up, is what's the rehab budget going to be? And so that usually means physically going out to the house and looking at it with my rehab estimate spreadsheet on my computer, or sending somebody who works for me out to the house to do that for me, which is what I do in Milwaukee. I have a full-time project manager who works for me. As a matter of fact, day after tomorrow, or no, today's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow, he's going to go to 5 different properties we're looking at buying and walk through them and do his rehab estimates, and then let me know so I can look at what the after repair value is, the rehab estimate, so I can determine what we're going to offer for the property. So that's really all it boils down to for me is how much does that rehab cost? That's the key, is being able to accurately estimate what your rehab costs are.
And the house, is it a 2-1? Is it a 2-bed, 1-bathroom? Or?
Yeah, we don't typically buy 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom houses. A minimum requirement for us would be a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. 2-1s are very hard to resell, and it's usually pretty expensive to do an addition to any house. So, it's not typically logistically, practical to try to add square footage to take a 2-1 to a 3-1 unless there's some huge upside to it. So our basic criteria is for all of our properties, whether they're in Phoenix or Milwaukee, is they have to be at least a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. And especially here in Phoenix, we need to know we can make that 3-1 into a 4-2 or at least a 3-2. In Milwaukee, it's interesting. It's a completely different market. People are completely comfortable with 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom homes. But our criteria is typically they have to have 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. They need to have a garage, at least a 1.5 to 2 car garage. We don't want to have to build a garage. Houses that don't have garages in Milwaukee, it gets really cold there in the winter, and it's no fun to go out to a freezing cold car and have to shovel snow off. So
Sure.
From a resale standpoint, we want to make sure they have a garage. Here in Arizona, it's the opposite. It's really hot here. So you want to have a garage to park your car in to keep it out and safe from the heat.
And the house, is it a C-type, a B-type?
We typically just buy in, I would say, a minimum of a B-type neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, we don't, and that's more just, that's just the business model we chose. I've got friends of mine, investors here in Phoenix, who are in the C and D neighborhoods, and they do quite well. But typically, our vision for a property, the types of finishes that we like to use, and we found that we have the most success as far as from the largest pool of buyers is in that B to B plus to A type neighborhood.
And how long does it usually take you to sell the house once it's completed?
Well, it just depends, I guess. You know, a lot of the houses that we've been fixing and flipping in Milwaukee, we have them sold before we even finish them.
Cool.
Because we work with a lot of investor buyers in the Milwaukee market, and we've got a pretty extensive list of those. So we have them kind of lined up to buy properties before we even have to put them on the market. Here in Phoenix, you know, we're selling anywhere between 1 week and 30 days. It's the market here is quite brisk.
So you don't have any holding costs. You don't have long holding costs while you're doing the rehab and so forth.
Not typically, no. And then that's part of having a business that's built to scale, and having a team of contractors that not only you can rely on, but are loyal to you, because you do two things. Number one, you provide them with a steady stream of business. And number two, you always pay on time. It's remarkable to me how many fix and flip investors, new and experienced investors, have trouble paying their contractors on time and quickly. That goes a long way, and can actually help you negotiate even better pricing with your contractors if you pay them promptly, give them reasonable draws throughout the project, and then when they're done and they've done a quality job, pay them immediately. Like, I'm talking on the job site as they're walking away from the house. If you do that, you're going to generate a lot of loyalty, and you're going to generate a frequent flyer type of discount. You know, they're going to be more prone to
giving you priority over
priority,
sure,
and to give you better pricing. So sure. It was funny. It's funny. Last year, I was visiting one of our houses in Milwaukee, and I was outside. I was shooting some pictures of the outside of the house, and the house was already on the market. It was actually already under contract. We sold it in the first weekend we had it on the market. And it was our electrician, and he was there just to do some kind of inspection type work on the property that the buyer asked us to fix. And he came up to me and he said, "You know, Marty," he's like, "you guys should teach a class on paying on time." He's like, "because so few people, especially investors, ever pay me on time. And you guys are like clockwork. As soon as I finish a job, I'm getting the check in the mail." And they really appreciate that.
And do you have subcontractors, but are they on your team, or it's an outside job?
We don't employ any contractors. In other words, we don't have anyone on our payroll. You know, they're all subcontractors. We have our own project manager on our team, but all of the trades are subcontractors. And but and the reason for that is, you know, we don't have employees, you know, and we also want to have people on our team who are entrepreneurial in nature themselves. As soon as you start paying somebody by the hour, it seems like the quality of their work begins to slip and their efficiency begins to decline. So
yeah, they're not starving anymore.
Right. We like to work with entrepreneurial types, and those are people who are self-employed, who have their own businesses. However, we like to keep them so busy that it's almost like they're our employees, because we just keep them going from one job to the next to the next.
And also, fix and flipping, it's tax intensive, right? So do you look also at apartment building as a long and hold? How do you have your passive income? So
yeah, I mean, honestly, in Phoenix, I don't believe that in Phoenix, you know, it's a great market to own rental properties. There's so many investors in this market that the Phoenix market's more like an appreciation type play, where
just like Portugal.
You're just buying and you know, a lot of investors I know that own rental properties here are barely covering their debt service because rents aren't high enough here. I mean, so we found, you know, obviously, and it's a big reason we love Milwaukee so much, that we kind of get the best of both worlds there. Rents are high, purchase prices are low. The yields are much better. The cap rates are much higher. And so that's where we prefer to buy and hold our rental properties, is in the Milwaukee market. And we own a lot of multifamily homes there. We don't own any apartment buildings, but we own several duplexes around the market. And we just, in addition to the cash flow, which is excellent, we have seen some really nice appreciation there year over year, the last about 5 or 6 years, really 6, 7, 8%. So yeah, we love the Midwest.
And regarding for the future, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in the future of your company heading?
Well, I mean, we love what we do. We love fixing and flipping houses. Like I said, we love the transformation. But for me, this business is all about time and money freedom. And so, and I continue to reap the benefits of that on the time side. I mean, next week I'm leaving on Wednesday to go on a 5-day camping trip with my wife and daughters. They're on their fall break. And so looking forward to that. Traveled a lot over the summer, went to Cancun for a week with my parents to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. So I love to travel, and I love time with my family. So as long as my real estate business is successful, I'll continue to do those things, but also, operate the business. It kind of runs itself. I mean, we got a great team of contractors here in Phoenix and Milwaukee. We got a great project manager, and we're continuing to build our rental portfolio in the Milwaukee market. And, hopefully in a couple more years, it'll generate enough passive income for us where, I don't necessarily need to fix and flip houses anymore, but I still love it. So I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Gotcha. And advice to your younger self, what would you say?
Well, it's interesting. When I left my job as a TV news cameraman, my goal was to do enough real estate to have $10,000 a month in passive income, because that's what I read in Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. His goal was for him and his wife to have enough passive income to have $120,000 a year of income, whether he worked or not. And so that was kind of my goal at the very beginning. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. And in 2006, prior to the market crashing, I was there. Had I sold off all the real estate I owned at that time, or not all of it, but all but say 10 or 12 properties, I could have owned a nice little rental portfolio free and clear, had a nice house in not just where I lived in Phoenix, but also up in the mountains in Flagstaff, away from the extreme heat, and a lot of other really nice stuff, right? But I got greedy, and I just kept piling on the real estate, and eventually, the market crashed. So I kind of remind myself constantly now that that's still the goal. I mean, it's a little more than $10,000 a month now, so that's why I'm still doing it. But once I reach that point, right, I hate to say play it safe, but stop and kind of, smell the roses and evaluate and decide where I want to go from there. But I think the lesson for anyone, no matter their age, is invest in assets, not liabilities. Buy assets, not liabilities. And that's, again, a Robert Kiyosaki lesson. Invest and buy things that make you money, don't cost you money.
Gotcha. And regarding books, because I'm a bookworm, I tell this to everybody. I read like an insane person. So what have you been reading lately that you would like to share with our listeners?
I just finished reading, and it's a very short book. I think you can buy it on Amazon or on Kindle for $4. It's called The One Sentence Persuasion Course by Blair Warren. I just finished reading that. And let's see here. I'm kind of in this mode right now where I'm trying to build the marketing side of our coaching company. So I've read a lot of different real estate investing books and a lot of personal development books. I've read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill several times. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is a really good book for personal development. I've read The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. I mean, I've read a lot of personal development type books. But right now, like I said, in this marketing mode and learning how to market our coaching company. So I'm reading Russell Brunson's book, .com Secrets and Expert Secrets. I've been kind of reading both of those books at the same time. But I think if you're business minded, I would suggest like the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Because I think a lot of people who get into real estate investing and specifically fixing and flipping houses, they watch the reality TV shows. And I can tell you that those people doing those shows, that's not reality. They're performing, and chances are that's not their real business. They're just kind of showing people how to renovate a house cutely and creatively. They're not showing you the business side. So I would encourage anyone who's looking at doing this to really get up to speed on how to run a business, and it'll help you fixing and flipping houses, because fixing and flipping houses is very process oriented, which is a big reason why I loved The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. So that's a great one. And I've reread that several times as well.
Me too. And finally, where can our listeners get a hold of you if they have any further questions?
So I think a great resource is our website, fixandfliphub.com. That's fixandfliphub.com. We've got how-to videos on the website itself, and we have transformational videos. We do a lot of videos at our houses so you can see kind of before and after. We have tons of blog posts on there, and we also have a free guide. It's called How to Fix and Flip Your First House on there as well. And then of course, all my contact information is on that website as well. And then we have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page as well.
And it was wonderful having you with us today. Hope to speak with you soon.
Great talking to you. Thanks.
Thanks.